Okay, violence and terrorism is another misconception that people have, is often associated with Islam, that Islam is very, restrictive, Islam is violent, and inherently maybe there is a teaching in Islam that cause violence and terrorism. What's interesting is that the book that I would want to show you is written uh, by Todd Green. As understanding this book is important because the book is called Presumed Guilty, and I know that the picture is disappearing while I'm showing you. But Presumed Guilty is a book. It says that why we shouldn't ask Muslim to condemn terrorism, and what he said in the book is very, very important. Uh, he he actually shared a research from a scientist who have collected the studies across the world since 1989 to about 2003 about the suicide bombings that have happened, or suicide across the world. And he said that interestingly, the interviews that he has conducted and the research that he has done across the world about this issue find out that most of the time people who have committed suicide or carried any kind of these acts are usually more secular rather than religious. And he said there is no association of religion in that. It may be a motivation because religion has always been used to manipulate people and been used to gain personal agenda, and that's what violence is about. Violence is about using own personal agenda, political agenda, to achieve the goals that they want to achieve. So terrorism and violence is associated with that political agenda that people wanted to achieve, regardless of the faith. It may not necessarily be, yes, faith can be used as a tool to manipulate people, and that has been true for many other examples in the history. You can pick a book called Biography of Muhammad by Karen Armstrong, and she also talked about the same issue that happened in Christianity, where they were promised to be in heaven or with Jesus if they fight this war. And so that kind of manipulation has been used in history through the world leaders or religious leaders who have manipulated mass in order to achieve their agenda. And that could be true, that religion can be used as a tool. But violence and terrorism in itself is not necessarily encouraged in Islamic faith or encouraged in any faith. So we need to understand that. And if you want to need to understand this topic further, because it's very complex, and I have been working on a program or on a course that's called Violence in a Society through Psychosocial Perspective. The book will also be coming out pretty soon, so keep an eye for that. And in that book, I would analyze it through various different perspectives. So it's a very complex issue. It's not an issue that we can just associate with one faith, one race, one nationality, with the African American race or any other race. But it's a very complex issue that we need to understand through psychosocial perspective. So keep an eye for that. But violence and conflict is a part of human history since the beginning of time. It's a destructive part of human nature that's addressed in Quran. There are many verses that talks about it and does address that. So it's condemned. That act of violence is actually condemned because it's threatened humanity and it's destructive. Many Muslims have suffered throughout the world and become actually victim of violence, and should not be, because violence should not be associated, as I said, with one faith, with one ethnicity, one with race, and one with religion. There you would see a lot of research being done in this area, where they find out that the victim of violence in many of these studies have been Muslims across the world, which is unfortunate, but it's true, because of the prejudice, because of the growing intolerance towards Islam, Islamophobia, and many of those issues that have been emerging in our society recently. My interest in the subject of violence was sparked after the events of 9/11 due to terrorism, because to me it was a psychosocial issue rather than just a religious and a political issue. And to me, it's a simplification. Events of 9/11 contributed to the research in many interesting subjects such as political science, religious, spiritual psychology, sociology, terrorism studies, anti terrorism studies, international politics, religious conflict, political violence, which is often linked to religious beliefs, and can be multiple factors actually contributing to this issue of violence, whether political, religious, or national in nature. Violence is usually motivated by various different reasons. Nationality can be one of that too. People are so enthusiastic and they are so motivated by the nationality that they are able to commit acts of violence in the name of nationality, in the name of religion, or in the name of political agenda. I was interested in investigating this phenomenon of violence by analyzing the factors that are contributing to it rather than, again, simplifying it as a race issue or a religion issue, which I think is an oversimplification. So, if you want to go into that subject, read in detail, you have to, first of all, keep an eye for the course of violence through psychosocial perspective. The other thing you can do in the meantime is look at the book that I have just provided you the explanation for, Presumed Guilty. It's a book by Todd H. Green, and it's a very interesting book if you want to read this one. There's another book that I would recommend that you would like to read. In my selection of library here, you can see is The Fear of Islam. So, Fear of Islam. So, this book is written by Todd H. Green as well. Wonderful book. So, try to get hands on these books, read it, try to understand this complex issue, which is oversimplified, and we need to look at it more in depth in order to create a better, peaceful society. Otherwise, we will be annihilating each other. We will be at war with each other, and we would become a force of destruction in the world rather than being a force of positive change in a society.